Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family-friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do. And that includes that one professor I talked about last time.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Wikipedia to teach our kids history.
Wikipedia? As long as you're doing it right, Wikipedia is fine.
I know, we've discussed this.
You say we've discussed that every time.
Yes, because we discussed it
Sorry
every time.
if it seems like the first time to me every time.
Because you have the memory of a goldfish.
I think the show proves otherwise. That I have quite an expanded memory for important things.
Interesting what you have memory for. Okay.
When's your birthday again?
Continue.
May something?
Yeah, something.
20th or the 21st?
Yep, you say that every time.
All right. And I get it right most of the time when I guess?
Every time when you're told to pick one, you always pick the correct one.
21st?
You did it again.
Hey! See, I remember things.
Sure.
Talking about that one bad professor, I miss a lot of my good professors.
I know.
I enjoyed working with them. They were great. I miss them. All right, well, before I get into too many sad, emotional moments of remembering fond times with my history professors and some of my peers, let's take a moment to discuss something from a previous episode. It's important to remember that Shirley does not warn me ahead of time about what we're going to be talking about.
That is true. And actually, we're not going to share anything from a previous episode because your homework was to read those articles I have about Haitians in the Revolutionary War.
And I was supposed to read those in the 5 minutes that we took in between shows.
Yes. A peek behind the curtain here. We just recorded episode 40 like 5 minutes ago.
But this is so much fun. I enjoy this so much that I said I want to do another one. Let's do another one.
Well, and it's convenient for us to batch record when we can. So if you are waiting on the edge of your seat to hear that information about Haitians in the Revolutionary War, you'll have to wait till next week. So sorry. All right. Well, honey, I have a history question for you.
I love history questions.
All right. So how do you have a war with roses? Like, I know that the thorns are sharp, but like they not an acceptable substitute for swords. I don't get it.
No, they actually are a very acceptable substitute for swords.
How's that?
You see, what you do is you take the rose bushes and you take a flat piece of wood. You lie the you lie the stems out on that flat piece of wood. Then you take another flat piece of wood. You put it on top of those. You tie it with rope or bindings of some kind. Maybe use some glue if you don't want to do that, so that you now have a sword blade with rose thorns sticking out of the edges, and then you just walk out to your opponents and you give them a good strong whacking. You laugh.
That's ridiculous.
But plenty of weapons have been made using that method, though granted they usually didn't use something as ridiculous as rose thorns. They usually use
wood?
like animal teeth.
And wood?
Yeah, so they can use. The only reason that you would usually use teeth or rose thorns or whatnot is because you didn't have the metal to work with.
Oh, are we talking before the Metal Ages? Iron Age, whatever.
Not realistically, because even some of the Native American tribes, when the Europeans showed up, were still using swords made out of shark teeth, where they just like lay out the shark teeth on the end and you tie them together between boards so that you had a weapon.
That's cool.
It is cool. Lots of tribes have done things like that. Like, even if it wasn't teeth, they would use sharp rocks or sharpened rocks.
So this is what they were doing in Great Britain.
So this is a realistic weapon that has been done through the ages, at least before people had the metallurgy to make solid metal weapons. Yeah.
Wow. So that's definitely what they were doing before the Tudor times in England.
That is
Thank you
totally
for that.
What they were doing during the War of the Roses.
That was our fastest episode ever.
Okay, I should be fair.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to...
I should be fair. They also did a lot of singing in the War of the Roses. Some heavy metal, because they didn't have metal for their weapons, so they did a lot of heavy metal singing during the War of the Roses as well. Oh, what's wrong? No,
Did they also have
too
guns?
Much how I'm having fun.
Guns and roses? Is that where we're going next?
No, there were no guns, silly fool.
I'm the silly fool.
Yes, you're the silly fool.
No.
Actually, that's not fair. I do not know for sure. I am pretty sure that gun technology had hit Europe during the time of the War of the Roses, but I do not know that it was in significant numbers. I do not recall reading of any accounts that weren't what you and I would call the traditional warfare of the times with archers and bows and arrows and catapults and things of that nature. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there might have been, no. I think, okay, I'm going to take it back. I think there were a couple of battles where cannons were involved. but I don't know about guns.
Cannon feels very different than a gun to me. I know it's just like
Cannons
a smaller
are very
cannon.
different from a gun. Cannons came first, at least on the European scene. But yeah,
Oh.
so now that I've thought about it, yeah, I am pretty sure that during the War of the Roses, both sides did use cannons.
Okay. Well, or my second question would be, is this more like a situation like that old radio gimmick in the 90s and the 2000s called the War of the Roses? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember that. That kind of entertainment.
catch cheaters?
I don't like that because that seems wrong to me. Like I get
I love it so
why they're
much.
doing it, and I get that cheaters are bad people.
They deserve it.
But I don't know, something about the way they go about it rubbed me wrong.
Well, yeah, and after a few episodes, I kind of wondered if it was like genuine. But yeah, for our listeners who need to be enlightened, they would call up some not random, but like if I thought you were cheating on me, I'd have the radio station call you, pretending to be like, you won free flowers and we'll send them to your loved one for you. Like, first of all, who would fall for that? I wouldn't, because I trust nobody. If you call me unsolicited, I don't trust you. But anyways, and then they ask,
I can answer your question right away. Some people fall for the Nigerian prince scam.
I know, and it's awful.
Some people fall for, even otherwise smart people will fall for ridiculous scams.
I know. Anyway, so then the radio station is like, you won these flowers. We'll deliver it to your loved one. What name should we put on the card? Would you like to write a note? And then if you say some random chick's name, then I know you're cheating on me.
So
And then you're caught.
I suppose I should confess something now, since that show doesn't exist
You're
anymore.
cheating on me?
And this is probably never going to happen. No, I'm not cheating on
What?
you. But for the longest time, I had my script prepared.
See,
I
if
was
you
gonna
listen
send
to the
it.
radio, you know it's coming.
I
Who
was going
falls
to-
for it?
I was going to send the flowers to some ridiculously fictitious name, and I was going to put on the card. Okay, so yeah, apparently I don't remember it now, because I want to say I had it memorized at some point in
Oh
time.
my
I was going to
gosh.
put on the card some blatantly ridiculous
Yeah.
thing that ended with "I love you, Shirley,"
You're insane.
or and like the divorce papers are going to be in the mail or something like that.
God.
Because if you had done that to me, I would have
Seriously?
threatened
And
divorce
the-
papers on
And
you.
so many times people did. They would reveal like, "Yay, you put the right girl's name. We were tricking you the whole time. There are no flowers." And then they still get mad because their partner didn't trust them and set them up.
Trickery, yeah.
So like it never works. Whether they're cheating on you or not, your relationship is still.
Though I
Oh
do-
my gosh, it was so entertaining.
Now
though.
that we've talked about this one, I do remember that you and I were listening to one episode together that I'm gonna guess is probably our favorite episode, because the guy claimed that the woman that he was sending his flowers to, that wasn't his girl,
Yeah.
was like a friend of his or something that just found out that she needed an operation or something of that nature.
she had cancer or something.
And to give him the chance of saving himself with like, okay, what operation does she need? What she got? His answer was she got that bone marrow. She got bone marrow. It's just the way he said it was hilarious. Now, I want to be fair. So I know that we had a good long laugh at that, and I remember the DJs had a good long laugh at that and made a fake commercial about the rampant disease of bone
Absolutely.
marrow going around. But I am willing to bet that if this guy was not lying, that he probably just mixed up that she has cancer.
Yeah.
And one of the common ways of treating that is you need a bone marrow transplant. So he remembered that part of the whole thing.
But it's still funny.
Still was, yeah.
I sometimes think
So,
about that guy. Like, where are you now?
I suppose we should get to the true answer to
We
your
were
question.
talking about the War of the Roses.
All right, so
This is history. This was like 2 decades
Yes,
ago.
but this is past the 50s, so this isn't the history that I specialize in. However, there was another War of the
There was
Roses
another
that
one?
came before the 1950s.
Whoa.
Fairly big deal. Really shook up England a bit.
I would
so-
imagine. I mean, if we're finding out someone's cheating, that shakes up stuff.
So the War of the Roses was an English civil war of sorts that took place. Ooh, I do not remember the years now. This was before
For
this was
shame.
before the time of Henry VIII, because I want to say that Henry the Seventh or the Sixth was the guy in charge, or the victor in one of the fights.
Wait, give me a second. I'm going to sing the entire English monarch song that I learned from Horrible Histories because I'm pretty sure it says it in there.
Okay, go for it.
Never mind. I'm not going to do it.
What's wrong? Too afraid of embarrassing yourself?
William, Henry, Stephen, Henry, Richard, John. Oi, Henry, Edward. No, we'll get sued. I won't continue.
How can we be sued? We're not making money off of this.
They'll sue us for all we're worth.
We got to talk to your brother, who's a lawyer. He'll be able to answer that question for us. Can we be sued if we're not making money? All right. So anyway, yes, the War of the Roses was a period of was a quasi civil war period that happens in England before the time of Henry and the Protestant Revolution.
So this is 1455 to 1487.
Okay. And basically, it's called the War of the Roses because the two houses duking it out. One was the House Lannister, and I don't remember what the name of the other house was, but the emblems.
Tudor,
thank you. Yes, that's why that's why it's Henry. Yeah, thank you.
I know something you don't know.
You were looking at your phone.
I knew it was the Tudors.
Did you?
I did because I knew it was Henry.
Okay,
Henry.
Apologize. So what I said earlier, it was one of Henry's earlier descendants. So yes, they're fighting a war over control of the throne of England, and it's known as the War of the Roses because the insignia, the signet of both families were different colored roses.
That's so boring. Like, you couldn't be more creative than that.
I'm sure that
why were they both roses?
When we're all dead and we go up to whatever afterlife there is, and you track them down. Okay, so I'm a big fan of going with Greco-Roman on this. So when we get into Elysium or Hades, assuming that we're all going to be together, whichever it is, you can track them down and ask them, "Hey, why were you so stupid as to pick flowers? I mean, that's so boring. Why didn't you pick like a 7-headed mastodon with wings shooting lightning out of its butt or something?"
I mean, flowers are fine, but why both roses? There's so many flowers in the world. What? Why roses?
Why do men have to give? Why is it that men don't give women calla lilies on Valentine's Day?
I literally don't know.
Roses are just the one. They're the popular one. That's the one you go with. Why do so many people put lions on their flags instead of ducks or platypi?
Is that a genuine question?
It's me trying to point out that people picked the best one, the one that's prettiest, the one that has the best reputation.
Okay, continue. I'm really listening, I swear.
So I'm hazy on a lot of the details of this, but I remember it was a long period of back and forth struggle with both sides having the upper hand at various points throughout. So yeah, I'm not overly familiar with the details. I know that there were more than a handful of battles. Like I said, I know that cannons were involved. There was a fair bit of changing of hands between the different players and the officers, the hierarchs that were involved. But I don't know what I could say about the conflict to make it any more clear, any more significant, other than this was two houses in British noble society that were fighting it out for control of the throne. I don't remember what happened to the previous king. I think that I want to say that he was too young at the time, and so there was the fight started off over who controlled him. Either he was too young or he was weak and incompetent or something like that. So it started off with who got to control him, and then eventually just full on blowed into, well, okay, no, actually, all right, I can win this whole thing. I'm just going to try to become the boss myself instead of controlling the king. I'm going to make myself king.
Okay, well, couple things. First of all, it was Henry VI.
Okay.
So Henry VIII's granddaddy. So Wikipedia says the result of the War of the Roses is a couple things. Victory for the House of Tudor and their allies. End of the Plantagenet dynasty. House of York reigns for 24 years. Extinction of the House of Lannister. And House of Tudor inherits Lancastrian claim to the throne and defeats the Yorkish dynasty. Okay. Establishment of the Tudor dynasty, obviously. So... what?
So, yeah, it was a bloody period with lots of fighting, but as far as its historical significance, all it really did was change the ruling family in the British monarchy and got rid of or significantly weakened other families. So we could compare that to just about anything that's ever happened in multiple realms all over the world throughout history. And that's when one family is perceived to be weak or another family gains enough power, they tend to make their own bids for the throne. And this is why we tend to call these periods dynasties, when a family and their descendants are the ones in charge for an extended period of time until that dynasty is eventually crushed, destroyed, overthrown, or whatever, and a new dynasty takes over. One could argue that if we were to compare this to American politics, the Clinton dynasty seemed to be powerful for a long time.
On the Kennedys.
Oh, the Kennedys would be a good one. Roosevelt had a very long dynasty.
Yeah.
But now I would say that
it
almost
wasn't a
all
dynasty, though. It was just him.
True, okay. But now I think we could say that, okay, most of those dynasties have gone, or at least are not as powerful as they once were.
Right, but, like, it's different in our society, obviously, because we're elected.
We elect and we don't have, like, families that stay in power forever.
Well, okay, so this is something that really, like, always confuses me.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm probably going to sound so ignorant because I know what a dynasty is. Like,
I will still love you.
Okay. If you have a monarchy, the whole idea is that God has placed you in this position to be the monarch because you have found favor with God for whatever reason, whatever. And the evidence that you have found favor with God is that you were born heir to the throne. So it's like a circular argument. Okay. So then my firstborn son is supposed to become the king, and his firstborn son, and his firstborn son, and it's supposed to follow the royal bloodline. But then, like, then the Tudors come and take the throne? They're not descendants of William the Conqueror, are they?
Well, to be fair, I don't know how many British nobility at that time were actually descendants of William the Conqueror.
Right.
I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet that neither the Tudors or even the Lancasters, for that matter, had actual direct descendants from him. So the descendant thing does follow a royal line. You do need an element of royal blood, or, well, usually in the case of...
You were saying nobility before. Is it just about having noble blood?
All right, so, well, let's start with William the Conqueror. All right, so William the Conqueror becomes King of England. His descendant, his oldest born son, is the one who's going to take over the throne after him. But he has more than one kid.
Yeah.
So, assuming that his other kids don't die and have families and whatnot, then they're going to have kids, and their kids are going to have kids, and their kids are going to have kids. So that's going to be an awful lot of descendants of William the Conqueror out there in England, but only a small number of them were the eldest son of the eldest son of the eldest son. So only one of, let's say that in 5 generations, there's at least 100 descendants of William the Conqueror out there. Only one of them is actually king. Well, what if he dies or is perceived to be too weak, a bungler or something to that nature? Then, all right, one of these other 99 has to take over.
But now,
let me finish. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
So now, if that one that was the king happens to have a brother or a closer relationship to him, well, then it's usually pretty easy. All right, we're going to make him the king. But what if the closest relationship is actually not a sibling, but a first cousin? Probably more than one first cousin also.
Right.
And just because first cousins might be the closest doesn't mean that there aren't other players that are going to get in there and say, well, hey, we are also descended, and hey, we're doing pretty well for ourselves. Sure, those guys are first cousins, but look at us. We're richer. We're more powerful. We've done better off. Surely God's favor is on us instead.
Right.
And so then you get into things that turn out to be like civil wars as the people fight over control of who gets to be the new dynasty. I'm most fond of comparing this to the Chinese philosophy because the Chinese had this thing that they called the mandate of heaven.
Yeah.
Which is basically that thing that the idea is that, okay, the gods have chosen you to be king at the time.
Right.
And in the case of the Chinese, when one of the dynasties was failing, the argument was made that, this family has lost the mandate of heaven. So it is now more likely than not going to be proved through war who now holds the mandate of heaven to be in charge.
So if you win, then clearly God favored you.
Yeah. So this, and that's the basis of so many things and so many cultures. The dueling that you and I love so much, watching people duel out with pistols or whatnot,
hate it,
is all based on the idea that God will sort out who is right and who is wrong.
Right. So, okay, so Wikipedia tells me it was the end of the Plantagenet dynasty. So who was in the Plantagenet dynasty? Which kings were that?
I do not know the song as well as you do. I do not remember the orders. I probably cannot sit down and recite the order of the English kings from beginning to end. I know of a handful of them that go in a row at a time, but I do not know all the orders for all of them.
Okay, so Richard III was the final in the Plantagenets, it looks like.
Oh.
Why?
I seem to recall he was fairly popular, or at least his play, the play about him is very popular.
Richard III was not a good dude.
Okay, then it must have been the play.
Then you don't know anything about the play. The play plays up how terrible Richard III was.
I should rephrase. I'm not saying that he was a cool dude that everybody loved him. I'm saying that the play is a good play.
Okay.
People will go to watch it. Macbeth is a bad dude, but it's a good play. People will go and watch it.
It was about him being a villain. Okay, that's fine. So Plantagenets, and then York, and then Lancaster, and then Tudor. Wait, who was fighting? It was Tudor versus...
So the biggies were the Tudors and the Lancasters, but there were probably others at play.
So the Yorks their got in there somewhere.
Alliances somewhere along there.
That's confusing.
Politics can be, especially family politics. Well, think about it. Let's say, okay. So, let's compare it to now. All right, so let's imagine our Congress. Let's say that the Democrats have 48 seats. The Republicans have 48 seats. Both of them, that leaves there's 4 seats that are neutral out there, belong to a third party of some kind or an independent. Both of those sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, they need at least 2 of those neutral people to be on their side. If they're going to, they need 3 of them on their side to get something done, to at least get the simple majority, which means that they've got to make allies with these people. You're not part of us. They're not Democrats or Republicans, but we need them to win. Families and dynasty wars will do the same thing too. Well, you can't win it by yourself, so you got to make alliances. And then, often enough, either the families will merge together, or more often than not, then you eventually turn on each other.
Yeah, you out them, your former allies. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I think Game of Thrones did it. I could be wrong, but my impression was always that Game of Thrones was ever so loosely based on the War of the Roses.
That's what I wonder.
Because of the competing families. Not to mention the fact that I think the names are actually very similar too.
Yes, I mean, because obviously I haven't read or watched Game of Thrones, but I am aware of the name Lannister, and we're talking about the Lancasters here.
In fact, I think when you asked me, I think I said the Lannisters instead of the Lancasters.
You might have.
Because I know that I get that mixed up.
Yeah. Okay, so
if I remember correctly, York was king of the North. Like I think Stark becomes king of the North. My knowledge of the books is very bad, so I shouldn't go on.
Okay. Okay. So there is a TikToker I would love to plug right here, because I think her name is Susie Edge. I'm gonna have to show you her. She has this series of videos where, like, people would ask her, like, exactly what I'm asking here. How the heck did we get from William the Conqueror to Henry Tudor, or, whatever? Mm-hmm. And so she, like, draws out the family tree and like, in the most simple way, and it's very entertaining. And a lot of the time she gets to, like, she follows the line down, son to son to son. And then it goes, well, and he died, but it was okay because he had another son. And then he died, but it was okay because he had another son. And then it gets to a point where it's like, there's no more sons. And then out of nowhere, she, like, comes in with this other family line. It's so confusing.
So it probably wasn't out of nowhere. So going back to something that I was talking about originally, so these the one king died, you got these 99 cousins of various distances out there, but all of them, because they are descendants of William the Conqueror, they all are nobility. Mm-hmm. Nobility is anybody that holds that royal bloodline, to add a little caveat into there, and also somebody whose rights to that bloodline haven't been stripped away by the rest of the family or the king himself or something of that nature, which has happened on occasion, but you had to do something very, very bad for that to happen. So while I do not know if the Tudors or the Lancasters or the Yorks, the Yorks were probably more descended from Danes, but could have also had some of William the Conqueror's blood in them.
Wait, okay, sorry, continue.
So odds are that the Tudors and all these other families had some manner of claim, some ancestry. They were some cousin of at least somebody that once held the throne. Not necessarily William, but any one of the past kings would have done the trick, would have been the validation of royal blood.
Right. I don't know what my question is here. I just want you to know that this confuses me.
So what specifically confuses? Is it confusing that these people that have been outside of the show, all of a sudden they're coming in and now they're the new kings? Okay, so the simplest way to understand that is it is a power game. Yeah. Every now and then, there's going to be somebody who has enough power that they're going to get bold enough, wanting more, to challenge the existing government or power structure or whatnot. And more often than not, this will turn to war. Usually, or especially throughout history, in the Christian world throughout history, among the things that you had to do before you could set apart on this type of thing was, one, you had to be of noble blood, you had to have the Pope's permission, and you had to have what was known as casus belli, which I don't know the exact definition, but I believe it's a good cause.
Yeah.
You need to have a legitimate reason explaining why the person who is king now should not be the king anymore, or rather the person that you're about to go to war with, it's just that you are going to war with them, instead of being unchristian-like and going around and just wanting to murder people for the sake of murdering them.
Right.
So yeah, there's a fair amount of political chicanery that would also go along with that, for sure. But yeah, that's often enough what would happen. To compare it to something else that I'm more familiar with, the Scottish War between Britain and Scotland.
Are we going to talk about Braveheart again?
I wasn't going to talk about Braveheart, but it is that time period.
Okay, go ahead.
That's a time period where the Scottish king dies, doesn't have an heir. And one of the things that leads to the trouble in Scotland is that they got those 99 cousins of all kinds of different relations all coming forward and saying that, no, we are actually more directly related, or we are superior, or we are more wealthy, we are more powerful, whatever the case is, to try to establish that they have the claim. But unlike the War of the Roses, the Scots, their warfare with each other never really amounted to anything directly going against each other, because England steps in and they end up kind of eventually uniting together against England instead of turning on each other. But they did turn on each other on more than a couple of occasions, just not in the large-scale war like the War of the Roses.
Right. Okay.
And usually it only comes to war if the guys in charge are not willing to just surrender and say, okay, yeah, you guys can run the show now, which is quite a popular thing in history. I mean, the ruling people aren't very keen to just walk away most of the time, unless
usually.
You know you're Ivan the Terrible.
Right. And we did talk about him. Okay, so I feel like I've totally
You've totally what?
I can't think of the word. I've derailed this entire topic because...
You did?
Well,
you asked me about the War of the Roses. I had a good bit of fun teasing you about making weapons out of rose bushes. Ooh, I want to say one of my favorite role-playing games, the character has a rose thorn whip that she uses to attack enemies.
See, rose...
Actually, it wasn't a rose thorn. I think it was just a thorn whip.
Yeah, okay, so rose thorns would not be the best thorn to use. They're really quite small, and they break off the stem really easily.
I'm not a botanist. I know nothing about garden
warfare. They are, if you've ever bought a rose, it's not covered in thorns.
I've never bought you roses.
I know you haven't, but if you...
I'll buy you some calla lilies next Valentine's Day. How about that?
If you were to buy a rose, they don't have thorns on them, because they're really easy to pop off. I just
always assume that the people that grow roses for commercial sale these days have an altered seed that doesn't grow thorns.
Well, I mean, that's possible too. But the kids and I used to get roses from Grandma's garden all the time. And literally, you just put your thumb on the side of the thorn where it's not sharp and you pop them right off. So that would not...
self-defense mechanism.
It would not make a good weapon. It just wouldn't. Okay, but for the War of the Roses, do you know any other details about this war? Because it seems like this is not a moment in history you're expert in.
It's sad because of this. So I know that I have read an awful lot about the War of the Roses. I know that I have studied several of the battles, or rather, I shouldn't say studied. I've read accounts of the battles, and I know there were some cool things, nothing's staggering, nothing like the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae kind of epic.
Yeah.
But no, there were some good battles and some good tactics, and but nothing that, to my mind, particularly stands out. If I were teaching world history to my students, and we came to the War of the Roses, unlike the Civil War, where I would stop and I would talk about all manner of things in U.S. history, if we got to the War of Roses, probably at best I would say there was this war. It was called the War of the Roses. You probably heard about this. It was called this because of the rose emblems of the two families. And this was a point in time where the royal family just changed hands. There was a civil war between various families, and a new family ultimately ends up winning and becoming King of England. That's all I would say about it.
Because that's all that matters.
Because there's lots of stuff in there, but that's all that is truly... That's all that I think is the most significant.
Yeah.
because like I said, I know I've read the other stuff, but the fact that I'm not like recalling a lot of those details, to my mind, suggests that there was probably nothing really epic or standoutish about it. So it would be like to say that. So it's wrong for me to say that our neighbor Joe is an insignificant person. Joe has never done anything famous. I don't even know if his name is Joe. I mean, to my knowledge, he's never done anything famous or epic. Sure, he's an important person to his family, but on the scale of world history, he hasn't done anything that's going to change anything or make himself stand out in the encyclopedia or anything to that nature. So while the event that the War of the Roses took place is an important thing to know because of how it came about and the outcome, what went on during it, I would say, is average.
Yeah.
So it'd be a cool thing to study if you want to know more about it. It's not a boring read, but it's not particularly significant. I'm hard-pressed to think of anything particularly significant that comes out of it other than the ending.
Right. So
and the cool name that people say. The name has become a thing, and that's gonna. It's arguably possible that if one of those emblems hadn't had a rose, then this would be another of England's many, many internal conflicts that people don't know anything about and would go away. Because England has had lots of these, but most people don't know anything about them because there was nothing stand out about them. There was nothing that made the name of it stand out in people's minds.
Yeah, certainly, like, kids in history class in England know more than we do.
I would imagine that would be true, yeah.
So to your knowledge, would it be fair to say that the most important thing to know about the War of the Roses is that the Tudors came into power? And then because of the Tudors being in power, like, other significant changes happened. You've got the Protestant Revolution. You've got Henry VIII, like, breaking from the church.
Yep. And also that Elizabeth, arguably England's most famous monarch, she's the last of the Tudors.
That is true.
Yep.
And then it goes to another dynasty. Who does it go to after Elizabeth?
I believe the new dynasty is called the House of Stuarts, but I could be wrong. Because I believe James and his family are called the Stuarts.
Yes, I think you're right.
Look it up, because I'm not convinced.
Well, let me sing the song.
Go for it.
I can't start it in the middle.
See, that's the second time, at least in just this space, that you've said that. Ooh, let me sing the song. I'm not going to sing the song.
William, Henry, Stephen, Henry, Richard, John.
That's as far as you got last time.
Edward, then. Well, now you put pressure on me, and I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, blame it on me and the pressure.
William.
I don't know anything about pressure, having to speak off the top of my head, having no idea what I'm about to be asked about. I don't know the meaning of pressure. I'm just a cisgender white Christian male.
I feel like that got personal at the end. William, Henry, Stephen, Henry, Richard, John, Henry, Edward, Stephen.
She's not looking at her phone.
Henry, Edward, Stephen. Three more Henrys join this song. Henry. Nope. 3 more Henrys join this song. Edward is the third. Edward. Oh, so
Rich
close.
the third. I thought it was Henry.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. Kings of England.
If the horrible history / ghost cast, what are they called? The 6 Idiots or something?
The 6 Idiots. Yeah.
Okay, if the 6 Idiots listen to our podcast, they're going to be ashamed of you. You who loves horrible history and loves ghosts so much, and yet you can't even sing the song.
I will get it. The kids know it. That's all that matters.
Should we bring them in? Are they
them.
allowed to be on this podcast?
No, they won't want to come.
She's afraid that they are going to outshine her.
They will. Okay, hold on. Okay, it starts with the Norman Kings. I didn't find a list.
Did you call it the Norman Kings?
Yeah, the Norman.
That's fair.
Okay, that's the first dynasty or whatever you want to call it.
It occurred to me, I've never called them the Norman Kings. I called William the Norman King, even though his children obviously were also Norman. I never thought of them as the Norman Kings.
And then after that is the Plantagenets. Okay, so I found William, I can't even talk. William, Henry, Stephen, Henry, Richard, John. Henry, Ed, Rich, 2, then 3 more Henrys join our song. That's the Lancasters. We're up to the Lancasters. 3 more Henrys join our song. Now we're in the Yorks. Edward, Rich the third. Then we're at the Tudors. We're getting there. Henry, Ed again. Mary 1, Good Queen Bess, Jimmy, Charles, then Charles, and then so that gets us past the Stuarts. Yeah, that's the Stuarts.
So it was the Stuarts. Jimmy or James was the Stuart. Okay.
And what's funny to me is then they skip Cromwell because that's a topic for another day.
No. He's not a king.
I know.
So they don't skip him.
I think it's funny. They skip him because he's
no,
not a king.
No, I agree with you. It's funny, but yeah, he's not a king, so it's...
Now I lost the tune. This is comic radio gold. I don't even know what I was looking for anymore. It was the Stuarts.
Yes. We were confirming that it was the House of Stuarts that took over.
Yes, and the Stuarts included Charles I.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Mary, Queen of Scots, though she never became Queen of England.
No, but she was House of Stuart, apparently.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're done.
Are we? Have you had enough fun? Have you sufficiently embarrassed yourself?
Maybe for a bonus episode, I'll have the kids sing the whole song, not just the chorus where it lists the monarchs, but the entire song. That would be awesome.
There's like a whole lib where they stop and talk a little bit about some of them.
Yeah, they talk about all of them. And the chorus is where they list all of them.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I do seem to recall seeing that.
I'm William the Conqueror. My enemy stood no chance.
Yeah, I remember it.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it's silly or serious because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge like a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm just paranoid. Excuse me very much.
There's no excuse for paranoia. There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
So wise.
I can't take credit for that one. I stole it from somebody.
I don't remember who. Like, that's one of those quotes that I should know, but I don't know.
So history would tell you that FDR said it, but like all great men, he stole it from his wife.
How dare he?
To be fair, he probably didn't steal it from his wife. She probably gave him the okay, but in either case, she was the architect. But yes, he gets a lot of credit. To be fair, I think that is one of the ones where there are enough people in the know that are giving Eleanor Roosevelt credit for the line now.
Well, good, because she deserves it.
She was very smart, very wise.
She was a very smart gal.
Oh, did I tell you when you were asking me those questions about the Battle of Athens? She was one of the people that wrote an article about it.
Yeah, you included that.